Let's just be real for a second. Nobody really enjoys talking about death. It's heavy, right? For the longest time, I kind of saw it as this abstract idea, something that didn't have a whole lot to do with me. But eventually, life has a way of making you look it right in the eye. And that's when you realize this is something we all have to face.
And when you're forced to face it, you can't escape this one huge question. For me, when I lost someone I loved very, very much, this question just stopped being some philosophical game. It got real, it got urgent, it got personal. I just had to know, is this really all there is?
And that was just a massive realization for me. I went from thinking death was this far-off concept to feeling like it was standing right next to me. An experience like that, it just forces you to get serious and figure out what you truly believe happens next.
So, this big question, what happens after we die, it is not new, not by a long shot. In fact, people were wrestling with this very same problem more than 2,000 years ago, and we're about to look at this fascinating, tricky challenge that was posed to Jesus, a challenge that gets right to the heart of this whole thing.
Okay, so get this. Around the same time that Jesus was walking the earth, way over in China, there was a philosopher named Wang Cheng, and he argued that death is just like a candle flame being snuffed out. Poof! It's over. Final. And what's wild is that a super powerful group back in Jerusalem, the Sadducees, they believed the exact same thing. When you're dead, you're done.
Now, you gotta understand, the Sadducees weren't some fringe group. They were the religious establishment. They were the priests who ran the temple, they had political power. But they were also very theologically conservative. They only accepted the first 5 books of the Bible as the Word of God, and because of that, they totally rejected any idea of a resurrection or an afterlife.
So, to prove their point and to try and trap Jesus in a logical corner, they came up with what they thought was this brilliant, foolproof riddle. They lay out this pretty extreme scenario, but one that was technically possible under the law at the time, where one woman ends up married to 7 different brothers, one after the other. And here it is. This is their big gotcha moment. They ask, okay, Jesus, if there is a resurrection, whose wife is she in the next life? See, all 7 of them have a legitimate claim. The whole point of the question was to make the idea of a resurrected life seem completely chaotic and ridiculous.
So how does Jesus respond to this perfectly laid trap? Well, his answer is, it's absolutely genius. He doesn't even play their game. Instead, he just completely dismantles their whole argument with 2 simple but incredibly profound ideas.
First, Jesus points out their biggest mistake. They're trying to apply the rules of this world to a reality that's completely different. He basically says, look, marriage is an institution for this life, for family, for society. But the age to come, it operates on a whole different level, where those earthly things just don't apply anymore.
And then, he delivers the knockout punch. He says the very nature of who God is proves the resurrection. Think about it. God is a God of the living, a God who has relationships with living people. If death was the absolute end, he'd be a God of the dead, and that just goes against everything we know about him.
And here's the best part. Jesus uses the very books the Sadducees claimed to believe in to prove his point. He reminds them of the story of Moses in the burning bush, where God says, I am the God of Abraham. Notice the tense, I am. At that time, Abraham had been dead for 400 years, but God spoke about him in the present tense, proving that to God, Abraham was still very much alive.
Now, this wasn't just about winning a clever debate. This whole idea of resurrection, it is the absolute foundation of Christian hope. It's the one thing that changes literally everything about how we look at life and how we look at death.
The Apostle Paul couldn't have put it more bluntly. He says flat out, if Christ wasn't raised from the dead, then this whole faith thing is useless. It's a complete waste of time. It is the central claim. You take that away, and the whole thing just crumbles.
So what does this hope actually give us? Well, it's a guarantee that death doesn't get the last word. It's proof that Jesus was who he said he was, the very source of life itself. It gives us a real, tangible hope that this isn't the end. And for me personally, that belief is what took the raw grief from my own loss and began to transform it into a new sense of purpose. Okay, so resurrection gives us this incredible hope for the future. That's huge. But, and this is so important, it's not only about the future. This is a power that is meant to change how we live our lives right here, right now. So the question becomes, how do we make this a daily practice?
I absolutely love this quote from the author Eugene Peterson. It just flips the whole script. So often we think of resurrection or salvation as this one-time thing, right? Like you get your ticket punched for heaven. But he says, no. Resurrection is something you practice. It's something you live out every single day for your whole life.
So what does that actually look like? Well, first, we have to embrace imperfection. A church or a faith community isn't a museum for perfect people. It's more like a lab where messy, imperfect people get to practice giving and receiving grace. Second, we have to practice it every day. This isn't just for Sunday mornings. It's for the tough conversation with your spouse, the stressful day at work. And third, and this is the really big one, we have to rely on grace. We have to admit we can't do this on our own. We can't just will ourselves into being better people. Real growth is a gift.
Let me tell you a real story. A pastor I know, we'll just call her AM, suddenly and tragically lost her husband. In an instant, she was a single mom to 2 young kids, her visa to stay in the country was uncertain, and her financial future was just gone. It looked completely hopeless. But then, something incredible happened. Her community just wrapped its arms around her with food, childcare, financial help, and then, out of nowhere, a door opened for a new job, a new path that was a perfect fit for who she was. That is what resurrection looks like today.
So when we face those impossible situations, those moments of grief, those moments where everything feels like it's falling apart, we really have 2 ways we can go about it.
We can try to do it all ourselves. Just grit our teeth, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and use our own strength. But honestly, it usually feels like you're in a little rowboat trying to paddle as hard as you can against a powerful river current. It's just exhausting, and you don't really get anywhere.
Or there's another way. We can choose to rely on God's grace. And that's like turning the boat around and just letting that same powerful current carry you forward. You're not fighting it anymore. You're resting in a power that is so much greater than your own, a power that keeps moving you along even when you feel like you have no strength left to row. That right there is the heart of living a resurrected life.
So I want to leave you with this question. This whole idea of resurrection isn't just some abstract theology for someday in the future. It is a real power for right now. So take a second and think. What situation in your life today feels dead? A relationship? A career path? A hope you've given up on? And what would it look like to invite the power of new life, the power of resurrection, right into the middle of that situation today?